Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 78. As always, I'm joined by Jordan.
Hola, mi amigo.
Welcome back, Dom.
¿Cómo estás?
It's been a long time, a whole 2+ weeks. I'm glad to have you back. Can't wait to hear what you've been playing, which it's probably not going to be no surprise. As far as what I've been playing, some more Odyssey. Nothing to say there. I've just been getting some more Moons. Almost at 700 now. Just whenever I have some free time and I don't really want to, when I'm watching a podcast or something, it's just hop in there and get Moons. And the way I'm going about it, I don't want to go too long on this, is like, we talked about this, Jordan, is like, I go through and I get all the Moons that I can see or find, like just me exploring, right? All my own
guides. Yeah,
no guides, no nothing. Then what I do is I go and buy the hints from Toad. This is after that. So like I get a vast majority of the Moons. Usually by this point I have like 85 to 90% of the Moons on the place, right? Because I just scour the entire area. And just run back and check areas, and like you've kind of figured probably by this point that in the every area where you enter a tunnel and stuff, there's usually 2 Moons. So if you don't get 2 Moons in there, you know, like, oh yeah, I only got 1 Moon in that place. So I do that, and then I go and buy the hints from Toad. And they kind of give you a marker on the map of the area, but they don't really give you any other details. So then I do that, and usually when I'm finished with that, there's maybe like 1 or 2 Moons that I don't know where the hell they are, and at that point I look up a guide. But I kind of go through these different filters before, because like I enjoy getting the Moons, you know. It's basically my process. I'm currently at a kingdom that I was about to say, but I don't want to spoil it for you guys if you haven't gotten there, so I'm not going to say what that kingdom is. I was about to make it slip by accident.
Shit. So the kingdom itself is a spoiler. Now I'm psyched, because I thought I was at the last one, but I guess I'm not.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that are surprising that it's like you just don't know about. So, anyways, I've also been playing Arkham Knight. I was telling you guys before the show that I'm in this weird thing where like I don't want to necessarily buy a brand new game because Black Friday's right around the corner, and doesn't mean I'm gonna buy a game on Black Friday. It's just that if I plan to pull the trigger, might as well wait till I'm gonna get some savings, right? So I'm just like, I have plenty of games in my library. What should I play? With the recent rumors about Rocksteady's new game being unveiled with the new issue of Game Informer, which it wasn't. We still could possibly see Rocksteady's game at the Game Awards, but all this talk about Rocksteady really got me interested in, like, man, I haven't really played most of the Batman games. I own Arkham Knight and all of its DLC. It's a shame that I haven't played it, so I hopped in and started playing that, and it's great. Obviously, we talked about before the show, its tank controls are hit or miss, mostly miss for a lot of people. But like everything else in that game is great. I love the characters. I love the twists. Surprisingly, I haven't been spoiled with this game. Like there's some stuff that happens that I don't want to spoil it for anybody else, even though it's an older game. Not too old, but there's some stuff that I didn't even know happened in the game that caught me by surprise, which is cool. I just somehow the game wasn't spoiled for me at all. Probably because I didn't watch discussions of the game, like spoiler talk and stuff, obviously. Yeah, having a fun time with that. I think I have an idea of the plot already, but
I was going to say, man, I'm not even super deep. I mean, I love Batman, but I've not gotten super deep into some of the comics and some of the storylines there, and even I could see from a mile away what the twist was going to be.
Yeah, they telegraphed the living shit out of that.
I figured it out.
Spit.
It was still good, and I didn't get it spoiled. It's still good, but I don't know. You'll figure it out probably soon, I think.
Yeah, I might already have it. I just don't want to say it, you know.
I think it's a super solid story.
It's good.
Everything else besides the Arkham Knight part itself is a super solid story. Like everything going on with Scarecrow and Poison Ivy, that stuff's really interesting and good. Well done. But the Arkham Knight parts are the weakest part of the story, I would say.
And the cool thing is, like, there's some surprises that have happened that I didn't see coming. And once again, like I said, these are probably very common things to people, but without spoiling it, the thing that happens when you first get to Ace Chemicals, well, not when you first get there, but at the end of that whole thing, when you find out about everything that's going down, that caught me by surprise because I didn't know that was part of the game. And that kind of continues throughout the game, which I didn't see in any of the gameplay, which is really cool that wasn't spoiled for me. And also, Man-Bat. Like, I was just going and grappling up a side of a building, and he popped out, and I was like, what the hell? Yeah. So I immediately went and tackled him and went to his lab and stuff like that, and that was really cool. I do think they give a really good reason as to why, like, a lot of the people aren't in the city while this is all happening, obviously because of what happens at the beginning of the game. And for me, I'm like, I really want to see them do another game, whether that's Batman, whether it's a rumored Superman or Suicide Squad. Like, man, their attention to detail and stuff is really cool. And I'm really enjoying my time with it. And I'm not even the biggest Batman guy. Like, I wouldn't say Batman's even in my top probably 5 of DC superheroes. I like him. I don't dislike him, but he's not one of my go-tos, right? Like, a lot of people love Batman. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But like, for me, it's really cool because I like seeing these characters and stuff, and I think it's a interesting enough story. So, yeah, that's pretty much
anything else.
Easter eggs in that one.
it's just Super Mario Odyssey and that. I rewatched Saw last night. Still love that movie. think it's great. Obviously,
Saw?
it gets off. I rewatched Saw. I love Saw.
Okay.
I thought you said
Sure.
Saul, and I was like,
Oh, sorry, no.
If you're not going with Breaking Bad, why are you going with Better Call Saul?
Obviously, there's
All
like
right.
7 movies, and they get worse as it goes down the line. But man, rewatching the movie last night, still great. I love it.
You just gotta find the one. You gotta find the one that Chester Bennington plays in. I can't remember which one.
He's in a Saw movie.
He's acting in one of the Saw movies, one of the later ones.
Probably
one of the
6 or
crappy
7 or
ones.
something. I only like
I don't
1,
know.
2, and I like some of 3. But
Very well written, I think.
Obviously, I
Those
watched
first
Thor
couple.
Ragnarok. No spoilers, but I really enjoyed it. I really loved a lot of the tones that they had in the movie. Taika Waititi, right? Is that the director?
Taika Waititi.
Waititi.
Taika Waititi.
I've heard he's a great director. I never saw What We Do in the Shadows. I never saw Hunt for Wilder People.
Love it.
I want to see them now. I like his directing style and stuff.
Yeah.
Really like where they're headed with Thor. I think they did a good job of misdirecting, whether intentionally or unintentionally, with the trailer that I saw. I didn't see all 19 that they released, but yeah, I like the Ragnarok a lot. Yeah, pretty much it for me.
All right. I think since I last talked to you guys, I don't know if I ever told you that I did watch Wonder Woman finally.
Cool. I still haven't seen it. I still haven't seen Wonder
It's
Woman.
a good movie.
Yeah.
It's it's a good movie. She's
Yeah, I'd
kicking
say it's
around.
a good movie. Wonder Woman is a good movie.
The Dom
It's a
Silver
good
approval.
superhero movie.
Which is,
you know.
something that you can't really say for the other DC movies, so at least there's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's definitely the best out of the other DC ones, yeah. Well, the current DC family. Anyway, that's about all I got to say on that. I've also played a whole bunch of Mario Odyssey. But actually, I'm not going to say that because compared to Jared, I guess it's not that much. I only have about 170 moons. And I'm pretty sure I'm nearly done with the game too. So you guys with me?
You were lagging really hard.
Something
Yeah.
about not as far into Odyssey as Jared.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll just start with the... What the fuck was I saying? Okay. I've also been playing a bunch of Super Mario Odyssey, albeit not as much as Jared. So I have about 170 moons, and yet I'm nearly done with the game. So, are you guys still with me? Am I lagging again?
Yeah, no, we can hear you. We can hear you. I just wanted you to
All
finish
right.
your point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it's fantastic. It's a really awesome game. It's super relaxing. I played it hours, probably like 8 or 9 hours worth, on an airplane over to I was going Amsterdam and such. So super nice to have on the plane, especially. Really, like I said, it's easy, especially early on. It's really easy, but that's not a fault. 'Cause even though it's easy, even the easier moons you get are like fun to get. It's kind of hard to explain. So it's this last world I went to, the food world, the luncheon kingdom, starting to get a tad bit more difficult, just barely, but still not anywhere. Like I kind of want it to really ramp up at some point.
Yeah.
I've heard the end game starts to do that, which is cool. So and again, this isn't, it's not to a fault, but it is really easy, at least so far. But it's spectacular. The levels most of them aren't, enormous, but they're so dense and there's so much stuff and so many secrets around each corner. It's really cool to find things that you would never have thought they were there, but the way you discover them is kind of satisfying. It's a lot of I got a lot of the same feeling playing Breath of the Wild too, but this is more condensed as far as levels. And Jared, like you kind of said about Breath of the Wild, there's a lot more open openness, which is a different thing, but a lot more open space with nothing, whereas Mario is a lot more, packed tight and cool. But the way you discover things is kind of similar. So I really like Odyssey so far, and I don't know. I guess that's what I got to say about Odyssey. It's one of the biggest games of the year, and I'm kind of like sputtering out on thoughts about it. It's just great. I don't know.
The interesting thing is, like, for me, I'm in post game. I've been doing a lot of stuff. For me, having visited each kingdom multiple times, man, the Luncheon Kingdom is easily the worst one, because like, I think it's the least interesting as far as like post game. I just think it isn't as well rounded as the other kingdoms, and I like the art style and stuff. It's just, man, it definitely doesn't hold a candle to the other like substantial kingdoms, because obviously there's some that are bigger than others, but for me, like, looking back on it now, playing all of the kingdoms and putting so much time into them, that Luncheon Kingdom just doesn't do it for me, which is strange, because like in all the previous stuff, I was so excited to go there and hop in stew and do all that crap, and it just didn't hold a candle for me.
Hop in stew, can't wait.
Hop in stew, that's a box quote. Yeah.
I gotta say, the New Donk City Kingdom, the Metro Kingdom, is probably my favorite so far. It's really cool.
I think you're in welcome company there. I think a lot of people find that to be enjoyable. Yeah. I think the festival does.
I wouldn't have guessed.
That. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that helps. But even without that, like, it's pretty cool. Like, watching the first trailer, I think a lot of us were like, "What the hell?" It's like weird. There's like humans walking around. It like felt off,
That's still fucking weird when you're playing it.
It is a little bit, but the level itself is just so cool. It's tough to explain, but.
Real quick too, Dom. So I was looking at this because you were like, I wasn't sure how many kingdoms are left. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'm looking at the list of kingdoms here, and you still have a lot of surprises in tow. So you still got a lot of things to check out.
I just got to like the Bowser Kingdom.
Yeah,
so.
That was really interesting take with that. That they went like samurai with that, like feudal Japan kind of.
I haven't walked into it yet. I just landed and turned it off. So I don't know. Yeah.
The fact that this game takes place on Earth, I think, is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is weird.
Flying around Earth.
I just think of it as like Nintendo Earth. I don't really think of it as like Earth, But then when you go to the Metro Kingdom, it makes it even harder, because it's like, well, these are like normal humans. So that didn't mean that like Mario spent so much time in the Mushroom Kingdom that he like became deformed. I don't know. It's really weird. I don't know.
It's just, it's a cool game. It definitely benefits from being on the Switch, too. I love portable games on the Switch. It's such a blessing.
The crazy thing is, like, their two biggest games this year, and the two that are probably going to get talked about the most outside of, obviously, Horizon for Game of the Year, I think completely opposite in the way they approach things, whereas, like, Mario is super tight and compact with the levels. They aren't very big, but there's a lot to do there. And Zelda takes the wide open approach, where it's, like, a very big world, and to some, I think it's just what you want out of it, because I've talked about to death of, like, how empty I think Zelda feels, and I don't like that. Whereas Mario definitely hits it for me of like very compact, a lot to do. So yeah, it's just, I think, interesting styles depending on where it's going to fall for people's Game of the Year. I'd probably be high on Horizon if I actually played the game, but alas, I don't have that opportunity. So yeah.
So other than Mario, I did start playing Resident Evil 7. Did get around to it.
Cool.
The wife's idea, actually.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
The old ball and chain introducing you to fabulous video games.
No, it's and I knew I would like it too. I just hadn't gotten around to it. It was just kind of one of those it just kind of slipped through, and you just kind of whatever, maybe I'll get to it. But it's really cool. It's fantastic. There's some things that are really fucking annoying with it, but
the boss battles.
Yeah, like the puzzles are really good, finding things to work with doors and this and that. Like, that stuff's really cool, but when they try to make puzzles into the boss battles, it's kind of like, fuck off, because you don't really know what to do, and then you're just getting chainsawed in half. And I don't know. Some stuff is irritating like that. But overall, it's fantastic. Like, exploring the house, and it's not like cheap jump scares so far that I've experienced. It's kind of more moody and cool. There is some stuff that jumps around, but overall it's fantastic, and I love. I think it had to have been someone had to give the okay for like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre references in this. I would think.
Yeah.
Or at least they had to say like, hey, whoever created that first Chainsaw movie, like, nods to you, like, thanks, something like that. because it's cool. But I love that. I love how they did that when you wake up at the dinner table, even though I knew it was coming. That was really cool. So
did you play the demo when it came out?
Not when it came out, like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because I downloaded the demo, and I told my wife, like, hey, let's just check this out with me really quick. I think you might like it, because she loved Until Dawn. So
cool.
And I know she loves Texas Chainsaw, the original movie, like the 70s movie. And so we played through the demo. I played and she just watches, but she was like, holy crap, this is fantastic, let's buy this game. So we ended up buying the game. So that's how that happened.
Hell yeah.
But, yeah.
I can't wait for you to get to the ending. There's some differing opinions as the game progresses, the quality of it. And, like, there's some criticisms with the third act, which I don't want to spoil for you or anything, but I really like that game. That game, I think, is currently in probably like my top 5 for game of the year. I really enjoyed it. There are some frustrations for me. I didn't really experience those, like with the boss battles, but I completely see where you're coming from. Like when you're in that confined area with the dad, and he's like,
the second Jack boss battle, what you were mentioning, Dom, where he's got the chainsaw. That one's pretty fucking bad.
I didn't have issues with that. I enjoyed it, but I've seen videos and stuff of people where it gets frustrating. I'm like, I completely understand. I see why people have a problem with it, so.
Yeah. But overall, it's fantastic. I like it. Not anywhere close to done. We played for 3 or 4 hours or so I'm looking forward to getting more into that. Otherwise, last thing, it just came out today. I spent like a half an hour on it. Is the South Park Phone Destroyer game, the mobile game?
Interesting.
You guys aware of this?
Yeah, it's the one that like makes fun of it having microtransactions, right? When you first open it. Right?
Oh,
I think there's like a joke with it. Yeah, I think there's a joke of like, this game has microtransactions. It's like kind of being.
That's what I read, and that was it.
Yeah.
I didn't take that as a joke. I don't know. But anyway, I like it. It's kind of like one of those phone takeover games. Like, you, it plays a short cutscene, and then the cutscene ends with Cartman is calling the new kid, right? And then all of a sudden your phone looks like it's starting to ring, and you're getting a call from Cartman. It's pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
And you click answer. Yeah. I imagine there's more of that kind of stuff coming, so it's kind of funny. And it's the same art style, as South Park and as the South Park games too. So that's pretty cool. And so far the gameplay is, it's a phone game, but we'll see how it goes. I'll keep messing around with it. So that's what I got.
Interesting. I never pegged you as a huge South Park guy. I guess it's just something I didn't.
I love South Park.
Yeah. Interesting.
Huh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the other game I want to play. Fractured But Whole. Got to get around to that.
Now we take it to the shadows with Jordan. What have you been playing?
To the shadows. Yeah, my Skype camera looks a lot darker than what I'm actually recording, but which
I just see like your skin, because obviously you have like your big bushel of hair in your beard, so it's just like I see like
I am Batman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'll jump on Thor real quick. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I did think it was a good movie. Even a great movie, I'd say. Just kind of the colors and the music, the vibe of it was obviously very 80s, which I think they pushed that in the marketing quite a bit. The action was really fucking dope. I really liked Valkyrie, the character, and I'm also a big fan of Norse mythology, so I like that they were leaning into that a little bit more this time. It's got its fair share of problems, but I think I liked it better than Spider-Man Homecoming.
Interesting.
Earlier this year.
Spider-Man was a cool movie, too.
I wasn't totally in love with Spider-Man Homecoming. I think you liked Spider-Man better than I did, Jared. So,
yeah.
I would say I like this one. This is my preferred Marvel movie of the year, I guess you'd say. But anyways, what I've been playing... of course, I've jumped into my favorite game of the year's DLC, Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds.
Oh, how is it?
So, it's it's funny because one of the big parts about it is that they've upped the power level and the difficulty of the actual robot animals.
That's good.
Which I already thought they were pretty much as overpowered as you could possibly make them.
Yeah, they are.
I was proven wrong, and that goes into some of my issues with the game about how I get the fact that Aloy should be vulnerable, but at the same time, I think that it's just way too easy to just get totally fucking destroyed, and especially even one hit, even when you're over leveled sometimes. And
it's like
cheap in that sense.
It contrasts with, like, apparently your arrows are fucking powerful as all hell, right? And they can take down these giant robots. But yeah, one hit from them and you're like, half your health is gone. It kind of doesn't. It's one of those, it's a video game, suspension of disbelief things.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a little unbalanced in that sense. Even more so, I feel like more times in this game than a lot of other games, it happens where, like, I turn and I have the character running towards the screen, and then I have a giant something like jumping at me with its fucking huge claws, and that also like spins and turns and whips you with its tail at the same time. And I just feel like a lot of times I can't see where I got hit, but I get hit nonetheless. I get health taken away and get knocked down, and it just really seems like even when they're not actually touching me, I'm still getting penalized for it. So I guess when you play it, Dom, I can go a little bit more deep into that, but either way, it is still my favorite game of the year. It is still up top in the running for my game of the year. I think it's eventually going to beat out Mario when we get down to the nitty gritty at the end of the year. But basically the Frozen Wilds, you're going into Banuk territory, high up in these mountains, and you're kind of dealing with this mystery of dealing with some of their tribes, and meeting new characters, new enemy types, stuff like that. So it's, I wouldn't say it's anything that is too far out of the ordinary for expansion passes or
DLC,
expansion packs. Right, but I will say it does seem pretty substantial, judging by the several hours I've played so far, how big the map's looking, the map expansion is looking. I'd say it definitely feels like, maybe not Witcher Blood and Wine, but certainly Hearts of Stone, which is more than 10 hours. So if you're doing most of the content, I think it's going to be pretty meaty. So yeah, it's just making a great game better, I guess, is the best way to put it. So
I'm stoked now. I gotta get into that.
Definitely worth the time and money, I would say.
It's too much going on.
lots of games to play. Yeah, definitely played some more Mario Odyssey. Not too much more to say about that. Still enjoying it quite a bit. Still loving that gameplay and loving the on-the-go nature of it. A special shout out to a game I played a bunch of this week, and that is a game on PS Vita, which is cross-buy, cross-save with PS4, and that is called Downwell. Are you guys familiar with this game?
Yeah, black and white.
It's not black and white. I think it starts out black and red, and then you can change the color palettes. The more you level up, the more color palettes you get. I'm up to like 12 now. So there's lots of different palettes. Yeah, it's pretty cool once you get some of the ones farther in the game. But it is, I don't know that it's extremely difficult. It's just extremely challenging. But it's still very fun nonetheless, and it's really classic gameplay. It feels like an NES game or a Super NES game, and you're basically just going down this well, and there's all different kinds of critters that you have to either jump on top of or shoot with your boots, and that's how you kind of go about the world, is you jump obviously and then shoot out of your feet. So it's really cool, really fun. Great concept. I'd love to see that studio do more. I think the game was only like $5, and that wasn't even on sale. That was just the price of the game. Like I said, it's cross-buy, cross-save. Excuse me. May not be cross-save, actually. I know it's cross-buy for sure. But either way, really, really great game, and not something that gets talked about a lot, or even did when it got released. So I'm really glad I moseyed on back to it over there on the Vita. And then besides that, I don't think I got around to any more Assassin's Creed Origins this week. I'm sure I'll get back to that at some point.
How do you like it, though? That's one I'm on the verge of. I'm the cusp.
I would actually just direct you to last week's podcast, because I had lots of complaints with it.
Really?
Definitely, yeah. It's one of my least favorite Assassin's Creed games of recent years. And
shit.
Jared was actually saying the same thing. I'm on the fence about it, and I was like, don't do it, Jared. Wait.
Oh, damn.
The interesting thing,
I keep on hearing people either love it or Not at all.
Well, it seems to me like people. It depends on two things. One, if you've liked what Assassin's Creed has done before, and two, what exactly those things you did like about Assassin's Creed before. Because like I think Jordan's I hate to say the word purist, but like I think he likes a lot of like the core things with Assassin's Creed, whereas a lot of the things you're seeing people talk about how the reason they like Origins is because it doesn't do a lot of those things. So I think a lot of a lot of the disconnect is that people who wanted more Assassin's Creed with more things on top of that aren't really getting that, but the people who didn't really like how Assassin's Creed was before are getting a new take that lets them enjoy Assassin's Creed. I think that's where the disconnect is of like you have these people that are like muddled on it, and then you have all these people like, oh no, it's fantastic. I think that's where it comes from.
At the same time, I would have minor disagreements with that in the sense that I'm cool with it deviating from the formula.
Yeah.
I just think that the ways in which it deviates, it does pretty poorly.
Yeah.
So, it tries to have like Bloodborne-esque combat, and they're just nowhere near being able to pull that off. Stuff like that. So, I think that the deviations and the way they mix up the formula, they're just really poorly done, in my opinion. So, but I'm all about. There's certainly things in Assassin's Creed that need to change, and that's another thing. Is just the way in which they changed it, or not the ways that I think a lot of people, and myself included, have wanted that series to change. Certain little things that are still there, and then they change things that didn't need to be changed at all. So,
yeah,
I guess that's a pretty general description of my issues with it, Dom. And then I guess I'll give a quick shout out to a couple shows. I'd like to give a shout out to the second season of Aziz Ansari's Master of None on Netflix. Watched the first season and didn't really love it. I felt like it borrowed way too heavily from shows like Louis specifically, especially the fact that it is like what a lot of these shows are, Marin and Master of None.
Not someone you want to be borrowing from these days either.
Well, yeah, who knows if Louis been jerking off in front of female comedians for years or not. I don't know.
I shouldn't laugh.
He makes an incredible television show, that's for sure. And these shows that are about like a quasi-realistic version of these comedians' lives, and then they push into more artistic formats and artistic territories, you might say. I felt like it borrowed too heavily from Louis, but they. And it kind of started off, I was feeling the same way about the start of the second season, but then they really pushed this specific storyline that I felt they did really well, this kind of romance love story, which I'm usually not, too far into, but I thought it was handled so well and ended so well that I was pretty pleased with it and was pretty far invested into it by the end. So I'll definitely be giving the third season a try, though I still feel like, I love Aziz Ansari, but I'm a much bigger fan of his stand-up comedy and his acting where he's not the one writing it or he's not the one behind the show, like Parks and Recreation, for example. So I'm much more of a fan of those areas of his career, but I'll still be giving this a try just because of the fact that this second season I felt was a big improvement, and because I am a big fan of him outside of this work specifically. And then I'd also like to give a shout out to Star Trek Discovery, which sort of unfortunately isn't actually being aired on TV. It's locked behind CBS All Access, which is their digital streaming service that you have to sign up for to get access to this show. And I've never actually watched a Star Trek show before this. The only thing I'm familiar with is the 3 reboot movies that have come out most recently, which I'm a pretty big fan of. But this show deviates a little bit from that and does go more into the harder sci-fi aspect of Star Trek, and I think handles it really well. It's also really gorgeously shot, probably the biggest, oddly enough for it not actually being broadcast on television. I think it has the biggest CG special effects budget of any show I've ever seen, even bigger than stuff like Game of Thrones, for example. And it looks absolutely gorgeous, especially when they're showing shots out in space and shots of the ship. But it's also really, really well acted. Jason Isaacs, and then, gosh, I'm forgetting her name now. Seneca Martin Green, I think. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her name, but she's Sasha
Yeah, that sounds right. I
Sasha
think that's her name.
from the Walking Dead, but really really well acted, and it's also well written. The scenarios that they're going into, it does have an overarching storyline, but much like other Star Trek shows, it also has a focus on standalone episodes. So I'm really enjoying it so far, and like I said, it's kind of not getting the buzz that it seems to deserve. And then last but not least, Mr. Robot's episode this week was what some people are calling a gimmicky deal, but I didn't feel like it was a gimmick at all. It was actually, it's an hour-long drama on USA, so it was like a 40-minute-ish episode, and it was all done in one take. It wasn't actually shot in one take, but it looked as though it was all one take, I guess, if that makes sense. And was a really cool experience, and was very much intense and riveting, which is where that show needs to be, which is where they got part of the reason that season 2 wasn't as good. They kind of got away from that and had some more tedious aspects of the show that they leaned on, which I didn't, and a lot of people didn't enjoy as much, even though I still think season 2 was very solid. But with that being said, and with the fact that this is the 5th episode of the 3rd season, I think that this is back to being the best show on television that is currently airing, especially with the shakiness of Game of Thrones and the fact that Louis has been on hiatus for a couple of years. So yeah, I think that Mr. Robot's back on top of its game. If you left after the 2nd season, I would say totally come back. Definitely my favorite show, and it's something I highly recommend, especially to people our age. It has a lot of, I think, resonance with people in their 20s, I would say. So yeah, shout out to shows. That's what I got.
Alrighty, let's hop into the news. We got a lot of news to talk about, some more than others, but some things we definitely want to cover. First up, by way of The Verge, Pokemon Go studio Niantic is making a Harry Potter AR game. Obviously, everyone knows Niantic's big success with Pokemon Go. A phenomenon, really, most people would call it. Insane, the way that game blew up. They're partnering with Warner Brothers, and they're starting a new studio called Portkey, which is a Harry Potter reference. And they're making a Harry Potter AR game which uses the same architecture that Pokemon Go pulled from with Niantic's first game, which the name's escaping me right now. I don't know if the article touches on it. The name of their original game where they had all this tech, and obviously Pokemon Go with that success.
Yeah, it's escaping me as well.
Has pulled in even more information, I think, for them. It's the game's officially going to be called Harry Potter Wizards Unite. I think this game is going to be successful in terms of downloads when it comes out. I don't know about post-release content. So I love Harry Potter. It's just weird to me to see how this game will have hooks in it, because the Pokemon Go thing completely makes sense. It's a franchise tied around going and capturing things. You have people go out into random places capturing Pokemon, and you have multiple generations of Pokemon to continuously release new Pokemon for people to capture. I don't understand what would be the driving factor to get people out to places. Is it like different types of wands in the game? Is it like, I don't know. It's hard for me to see how this will catch on the way Pokemon did, you know? I think it'll have a lot of downloads, but I don't think it'll be the phenomenon that they might expect.
If it's called Wizards Unite, I'm thinking that you're going to go out adding wizards to your army, I guess.
And collect them, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't... I agree with you, Jared. I don't necessarily... Though Harry Potter is a massively successful franchise, I still don't know that it's nearly as accessible as Pokemon was for a game like this.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's... I could probably rattle off, 40 plus wizard names from Harry Potter, but only about 25 or 30 of those are ones that actually matter, or ones that you would care about if you're a fan of the series.
Yeah.
And so with Pokemon, that's not the case at all. So and nor are these wizards nearly as recognizable. So I don't know if they're going to be able to get people. It's certainly not going to be the fad that Pokemon Go was. And I just don't know that they're going to be able to pull people out of their houses just to go recruit these wizards or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You guys, my hands right now are full of all the fucks I give about this story. So as
Dom, your hands look empty.
They're empty.
Well, I think the other interesting part of this is in some interviews, Warner Brothers has basically stated that they're focusing their attention on making Harry Potter games, because obviously we've seen the disappearing act of these normal licensed games that we saw for a long time, right?
Disappearing act. That's a good pun. It's a good wizard pun.
That gets me intrigued though, because I want to see a AAA Harry Potter game.
Yes.
A proper video game. I think this AR thing is going to be cool, and I think people are going to download it. But like we both agree on, I don't think this is going to be the Pokemon Go trend. But them saying that like we're focusing on Harry Potter games, that gets me excited, because if you have an RPG where you get to be a student, like create a student at Hogwarts, that's what I want personally. Like I don't want to do the Harry Potter story. I love Harry Potter, but why would I need to replay through that? I would like just exploring the world of Harry Potter and being at Hogwarts and all that stuff. Make
absolutely.
It could be, make an event out of finding out what house you're a part of and stuff like that. I think it's really cool if they do that. And I'm interested to see how this AR game does. I think, like I said, it'll have downloads at the gate like crazy, but whether or not there's enough substance there for people to latch onto, who knows? The second story here, I think, does matter to all three of us, because it's a game developer that we play their games.
Have my hands filled up?
It's by way of Polygon. Telltale Games lays off 25% of their workforce. Basically, what has happened, if you guys don't remember, earlier in the year, the previous lead at Telltale left, and they had a new person come in. Pete Hawley, who is the CEO now, basically says our industry has shifted in tremendous ways over the past few years. The restructuring is not expected to impact the release of any of the company's previously announced projects. He also has a quote in here that states, basically, more competitive as a developer and publisher of groundbreaking story-driven gaming experiences with an emphasis on high quality in the years ahead. There have also been reports that basically this restructuring of them losing 90 employees, which is a lot, and it sucks for those people. It seems like they might have been just spread too thin, like they were over-hiring to some extent. There have been reports of morale at Telltale not being the highest as you would expect for a company that's as successful as they have been. And I think with this, possibly for people who have issues with the engine, maybe this means they're going to smaller teams. Maybe that means that they can take a break between releases and they're not just drudging out game after game. Maybe that doesn't fix it. But it's unfortunate to see 90 people lose their jobs. Hopefully, it seems like the game industry has gone behind them and has looked out for them and trying to find them jobs in every avenue possible. But I think this is interesting from the perspective. I want to hear your guys' opinion on it. Is like, first, get this out of the way. It sucks people are losing their jobs. That goes without saying. None of us are saying this is good for that reason. But I think from Telltale's business opportunities and the way they're structured and the way games are coming out, they needed to make a change, right? It's not sustainable. Like, the way they were doing things with their broken engine, releasing game after game, it seems like they had way too many employees. When a new leadership comes in, they look at overhead and they look at numbers and they see where they can cut. And for me, it seems like a company that was growing too big for the sake of just growing. But I want to hear what you guys have to say on this.
Yeah, it's probably, and again, it sucks for those people that did get canned, but it's probably the best thing, for Telltale and for their product. It's kind of hard to think of that right now.
Yeah. It's always difficult when people lose jobs. Like, it's a hard discussion to have, because it's like, well, people don't have money to feed their families, or, it's like, but that's not necessarily where we're coming from. It's more of the business perspective. Yeah.
And you gotta try to look at it through the lens of, eventually, like you said, it's not sustainable, and this is sometimes what has to happen. Otherwise, the whole company disappears.
Yeah.
And that's not even hyperbolic. Like, you have to do what's best, for your shareholders and so on. Or I don't know if they're public or private, but this is sometimes necessary. And I think you're right. Like, this is probably a change they needed, and it's more than just trimming the fat. It seems hopefully there's more of an overall restructure, and kind of rethinking fundamentally the way they're creating games. Hopefully. And
I hate to cut you off, but like, hey, I love the Telltale games. Don't get me wrong, and I know you guys do too. We have our gripes with them, but like, Telltale games don't look like games that require 300 employees. That's what's crazy to me, is they had over, before this obviously, they had over 300 employees, and to me, maybe it was just bad structuring of like, why would you need 300 employees for for these games. Like, these aren't AAA. Like, they had way more people than AAA studios have, you know. And I know they have high turnover rates as far as the releases, but still, it's interesting.
Yeah, they're releasing multiple games at a time. You know, we just got the last episode of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then episode 3 of Batman Season 2 should be coming out soon, and then they're working on other games as well. So yeah, you know, Wolf Among Us Season 2 and all that. So got the next Walking Dead coming up through the pipeline. So they're not only releasing multiple games at a time, but they're also working on multiple games at a time. And that's not like Naughty Dog finishing up Uncharted 4 while some few people splinter off, start pre-pro on Last of Us 2. This is like, no, they're full force on 3-4 games at a time. Yeah, I do think that's not necessarily a sustainable model, no matter how many people you have working for you. So I do hope this tightens them up. I'm absolutely not convinced that this is going to eliminate some of the bugs or the stutters or the crashing that you get when you play these games.
Oh yeah, the proof will be in the pudding. Yeah.
Well, because they said, we got a new engine, like about a year ago, I would say, and it really hasn't changed the games that all that much, in my opinion. You know, another big question I have is, what about Game of Thrones Season 2? You know, I realized that game probably didn't do as well as they had hoped, and that they've mentioned it within the last year, but they really didn't give a good update on it. So I would really like them to either cancel that game or put out a release window for it, because they have kept people holding on too long, and that is still my favorite of the Telltale games. So I'd like you know, I would appreciate some further information on that, which maybe this sort of restructuring will help push that along. But either way, I think they've definitely got some. It seems like that company definitely has some areas of Band-Aids and bubble gums that need to be fully repaired. So.
Well, and I mean, we haven't seen really wholesale sales figures for them for their games, and maybe not only is this restructuring changing the way they focus on multiple games, but maybe we will come to a point where Telltale doesn't necessarily do these episodic things the way they're doing them now. Maybe they have to change that as well. You know, we could see Telltale evolve fully into something completely different, because they made it a point to say that none of the current projects in development are being affected by this, but they didn't say anything, like you said, about which we assume Game of Thrones is in development because they've stated so, but it's not really one that they push forward as it is in development. You know, it's very weird. And I agree with you, like, either give us a release date or tell us it's canceled. Just let us know, please. One way or the other, whatever. Just let us know. Earlier, the next news story, we were talking about Assassin's Creed Origins. Ubisoft actually shared some exciting news in their recent shareholders meeting, that Assassin's Creed Origins sold 100% better than Syndicate in the same 10-day period. It sold twice as fast as Syndicate. You know, Ubisoft has had crazy sales numbers this year for all of their games, and you know, Assassin's Creed is a game that usually sells, where people were wondering if, you know, the year off is going to make a better game. How is it going to do for sales? Are people tired of Assassin's Creed? For Ubisoft as a whole, though, their first half sales are up 65.7% over the same period from last year, and their digital revenue is up 70%. Last week, Jordan, we talked about the story that more than 50% of Destiny 2 sales were digital. We're seeing this investment in digital culture, and these publishers are seeing, you know, these sales on the digital end, and we've heard stories, and we're going to get into it on some podcasts about Visceral, and people have talked about how we found out some interesting numbers as far as retail cuts, and one of these supposed things is that for every $60 game sold, publishers only get $12. And obviously those aren't factual numbers, those are some numbers that people are talking about, but that has to do with a lot of retail costs and stuff like that. And if we move towards a more digital future, this digital revenue is going to skyrocket, right, along with microtransactions and stuff, which we'll touch on later. But Jordan, real quick, I know you're the Assassin's Creed guy. Obviously you have your concerns with the game, but from a selling standpoint, are you surprised that this game sold this much?
Not necessarily. I think Assassin's Creed, the reason they took off a year was not because it wasn't selling well, but because they could tell that the general message floating around the industry was that people were, tired of seeing an Assassin's Creed game come out every year. So I think it was just smart brand management, and it probably did give everybody just enough of a breath. Even people, like, I don't think that many people played Unity or Syndicate, but they got to not hear about Assassin's Creed video games for an entire year, so they were probably got just enough of a breath of not hearing about it to where they actually got a little more interested in it. And I also think that the fact that the Xbox One X comes out right after the release of this game, and this is one of the, I wouldn't say few games, but one of the bigger games
Premier
that is supporting, exactly, premier games that is Xbox One X enhanced at launch. I think is a big deal for it. I'd be interested to see how well it sold on Xbox versus PlayStation. And then there's other factors that may be unseen or not as well noted, but I definitely think that there's plenty of factors that allowed it to push a little bit further, and I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, even though I'm not totally down with a lot of the stuff they were doing in the game, it doesn't mean that everything that they implemented this time around is going to be locked into place. So I am happy that the Assassin's Creed franchise is doing well, I guess is the best way to put it, because yeah, it is one of my favorites, and I'm excited to see where they go in the future. Here's to a game in feudal Japan where you play as a samurai or ninja. Hopefully Ghost of Tsushima will kick that into gear. I don't know if you heard, Dom, but Sony's best first-party studio, Sucker Punch, announced their new game, Ghost of Tsushima, while you were gone.
Real quick, so
I know about it.
Dom, obviously these Assassin's Creed sales aren't that surprising, and I mean, we can get into the discussion real quick of, like, this is more of the same, right? Like we talked about before the show. Ubisoft, I think, is one of the hottest publishers right now in terms of sales, and I don't know if it's from their marketing or what, but, like, The Division sold crazy. Ghost Recon Wildlands is still one of the top-selling games this year that no one talks about, and that game still sells like crazy. Rainbow Six Siege still does crazy numbers on microtransactions and stuff like that, post-release content, and now Assassin's Creed. Like, I think it's just a Ubisoft thing at this point, right? Like, they just know how to sell their games, apparently.
Yeah, they do have everything going on. The way they market, the way their games are designed, and the way they're positioned. Yeah, I think that's all pretty good. I think South Park is doing pretty darn good too.
Yeah, it was on top of
NPD,
NPD, I think, for PlayStation 4.
Yeah, it was up there.
And even Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle sold very well on the
That's
Switch
right.
too.
Shoot,
Yeah.
that's right.
It's another great Ubi release.
Yep.
Yeah, they're doing. You're right. As far as publishers go,
And
they're up there, man. Shit.
They're putting microtransactions in their games, but it's not the entire conversation is wrapped around that, whereas
Right.
you know, other companies are having to deal with that right now, so they're probably very excited about the fact that that's not such a big deal.
They're quote unquote getting away with it, right?
Well, and it's like perfect timing for all of the you know, the sales that they have to worry about and the hostile takeover, and I think it's like perfect timing for them to show investors like, no, we need to keep control the way we are with the Guillemets because we're seeing massive amount of success. I think it's great for them. Next up, our second to last story, Microsoft investing in studios to make more first-party games. This comes by way of Joe Screbbles, in the words of Greg Miller, a made-up name, over at IGN. And basically there was an interview on Bloomberg with Phil Spencer, and he states, we need to grow, and I look forward to doing that. I'll read you guys the story. It's not too long.
Which is basically what Phil Spencer's been saying for the last year and a half. I just want to...
Exactly, but I think Bloomberg is a quote-unquote adult website, so I think that's why this gained so much traction, you know?
Triple X.
Yeah. Microsoft will invest more in software and services in the near future with a view to make more first-party games, according to Xbox chief Phil Spencer. We need to grow. I look forward to doing this. Our ability to go create content has to be one of our strengths. We haven't always invested at the same level. We've gone through ups and downs in the investment. So I like the honesty there of him saying, like, yeah, we've gone through times where we didn't invest in our own IP and stuff like that, you know? He's not shying away from that, which Phil Spencer never has been the person to really shy away from that stuff. He basically goes on in the interview, I don't want to read the whole article, but he basically goes on to state that they want to bring in more exclusive IP first-party games to Xbox by way of creating studios or purchasing studios to make Xbox-specific games, exclusive games.
Boy, wouldn't Visceral have just fit right in their first-party stable, man? That would have been so nice if EA hadn't have just been like, yeah, they're shut down. I'm sure Microsoft would have been like, "Fuck yeah, we'll take Visceral."
And
well, on that note, though, there is a lot of capital from Visceral that is floating around. I assume one name in particular.
Yeah.
That starts with an A and ends with Hennig. But
man, I mean, that would be great in this whole ecosystem. There's something else I want to touch on first before I get into that. So I think the difference here is I think a lot of people are reading this article as I'm glad Phil's finally saying they're going to start investing in stuff as if it's starting the day this article came out.
They're just now trying. Yeah.
Exactly. And if anybody knows business or has followed this with Phil, this has been an ongoing thing for a while now, and now they're just talking about it more openly. When he did this interview, it wasn't that was the day when they could start investing in things. There's stuff we don't know about that we're going to hear about as announcements. Like Jordan, you mentioned, Phil's been on this train for a while now this year. I think this just caught fire because this was a Bloomberg interview, and he was a little bit more candid with specifics. And we even recently had the interviews with Shannon Loftus where she's in charge of first party IP for Xbox, and obviously she's going to sit there and say I'm excited about our current lineup because I do think they have some good games on the horizon, except they don't have Horizon, but she has stated that like no, we need more games too, and I think that's great that they have this this openness about them that like. Yeah, we haven't invested in exclusive stuff, and we're trying to change that. I think Phil's position now that they got my brain's farting. Help me out, please.
Yeah,
I'm reaching for it.
He got the new title.
Exactly.
Among Microsoft executives.
The thing I want to talk about with Dami bringing up Amy Hennig, and this is a conversation we're going to have about the whole Visceral thing, so I don't want to get too much into that. But wouldn't it be great if Microsoft comes out and announces, especially in this time where people are worried about the death of single-player games and all of this crazy stuff, for them to show up and even do like a Kojima type thing where maybe you don't have a lot of the game, but have Amy Hennig come out and be like, Microsoft gave me the opportunity, the reins that they said, make a team and make a game. And she just, and imagine seeing a video where like it's a bunch of ex-Visceral employees being like, we're excited to continue working with Amy, and they work on something, and they just give her the reins to do something, would be great. I think there's a lot of other studios out there that they could also get. It's the whole IO Interactive. We don't know what's happening with them. We know new Hitman games in development. As far as them buying studios, though, I don't know if there's that many places that they can go out and just buy the studio and get it. I think they're going to have to build studios, I just don't see that many opportunities for these big first-party type, AAA type games from these studios that can just be purchased. So
maybe smaller studios that, maybe they buy but then kind of build out, something like that. But you're right. It's not like they're going to go out and Tim Geddes said something asinine about
they could
Bethesda.
Just
buy Bethesda.
I mean, they could buy Bethesda. I don't think they would, or that makes sense. But
I can't believe that. I didn't hear that shit. That's dumb as hell.
He wasn't being super serious, but
he was being a little facetious. He was saying like, imagine if they did something crazy like buy Bethesda.
I do think there's like some mid-tier developers, some AA developers that they could buy, like Avalanche. Or maybe
something like that.
Hangar 13 that just made Mafia 3. There's
whoever makes that
like
Biomutant game. What are they called?
Something
that size.
They're the Xbox 3 developers. Yeah.
Well, but it's former Avalanche guys, because Avalanche is just has 3. But I would say, regardless of whether they buy studios or create studios, I think the biggest mistake that they don't want to repeat is turning studios into franchise factories. So, for example, having a Gears of War only studio, a Halo only studio in the Coalition in 343. I don't think that that's a good idea. I think it's great that especially for 343, it's great that they are specializing in that and that they're so involved in that community, but I don't think that Gears of War is a series that needs a studio solely dedicated to that franchise.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I think that they need to steer away from that in the future.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because like Guerrilla was the
Killzone
kind of
studio
with Killzone, but they weren't named directly after something related to Killzone. I don't think. You could correct me if I'm wrong. And
which both 343 and the Coalition
exactly,
are. It's like, okay,
exactly.
a little too on the nose there.
But like, you can make the argument for Halo, like you kind of need a studio dedicated to Halo. But I do agree with you. Like Gears is in this position now where it isn't Xbox 360 launch where Gears is like one of the main attractions. Gears is still solid. They're great games, but yeah, I agree with you that they need to make sure that they don't pigeonhole these new dev companies. Like
it is weird that they shut down Lionhead, though. I mean, I get that Fable Legends wasn't working out, and I also get that Lionhead probably wasn't what it was back in its heyday.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was still a AAA developer that you just, cut the rug out from under.
Yeah, but like, I love the Fable games, and I'm probably gonna get grief for this, but like, I don't think Lionhead holds a candle to some of the first party studios that Sony has. Obviously, a lot of people can't say they have studios like that, but like, I do think that they, even going after mid-tier developers, I don't think cuts it. I think they have to maybe just develop these teams internally or find these people that can lead these teams to create these AAA top-notch experiences. Because, like, there are some mid-tier developers that could potentially, like Mafia 3 developers could potentially make a game that holds a candle with some of the Sony exclusives. But just on paper, I don't think that's the case, Like, some of the
I don't
things...
think... I mean, obviously, 343 would be the closest, and I don't necessarily think that they're anywhere near the quality of most of Sony's first party. I definitely think they've got a ways to catch up if they want to get to that level.
Yeah, I mean,
Halo
it's
4 was
interesting.
pretty rad.
I think it depends on what you look at with them. Because I don't think... I don't know. I don't want to get on that whole discussion of, like, this versus that. But as far as, like, dreams, I think Amy Hennig obviously is a no-brainer. Like, that would be awesome.
Amy Hennig working on Dreams by Media Molecule. I know that's not what you were saying, but like, how the fuck would that work?
I think like a reveal of Ken Levine coming back to make AAA games, which I doubt is not going to happen considering the way he exited. Yeah, I don't know. There's some unique talents out there that I would love to see behind a AAA first party studio. It's interesting. Like I said before, I don't think this is... you shouldn't think that this is like... They're starting today. There's a lot of things in development that we don't know about that are going to be announcements and stuff like that. It's interesting, too, the whole conversation of... Remember we were talking about earlier in the year of... Man, I would love if Xbox had a PSX-type event. And from a community standpoint, I agree. But now we're seeing this weird thing with Sony as far as announcements of, like... PSX might not even have anything substantial in terms of announcements.
Spread a little thin.
So
Bloodborne 2.
It is just like a community event, which is fine. But to build up the expectations of it being a place where there's a keynote to now possibly there not being one is kind of weird, But you can do that when you have as many exclusives as you do, so you have that choice. I don't really have much else to say about this. I'm excited. Phil said stuff that he's been saying all year, so it's not really surprising to me. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Any last words from you guys?
Bloodborne 2. Bloodborne 2.
The last news story comes by way of another shareholders meeting we talked about earlier, Ubisoft's. Take-Two, during their shareholders meeting, basically stated that recurrent consumer spending is the thing they're looking at now towards the future of monetization and earning money in video games. Obviously,
bleed you dry.
Take-Two are behind...
GTA.
I want to say Rocksteady and Rockstar. Thank you. I was like, that's not the name.
Interactive.
Idiot. Exactly. And
Borderlands.
The thing is like
BioShock.
Which, if you don't believe Borderlands 3 is not going to have microtransactions and loot boxes, you're out of your mind. That game fits perfectly into that whole model.
Ooh, yeah.
We had the issues with NBA 2K this year. They're atrocious microtransactions. But like GTA, no one's really complained about that, and that's making money hand over fist with its GTA Online microtransaction. So it's interesting. I do think he has a point here, and I know people are going to, corporate apologist and all this stuff, but in the era where we're hearing about these games that, these studios, it's unsustainable with the amount of money you put in for a game on top of the amount of money you put in for marketing, and then the small fraction of money they make from retail sales, which is obviously not a definitive number, like I said before, but you're seeing, and there's been stories, especially with like Visceral and Dead Space 2, of like, it makes sense why there's microtransactions in games. And
I would just say, as a counterpoint to that, I truly do not believe it's nearly as much as, gosh, it costs so much to make these games and our profit margins are so thin. I think one major factor is that it's mismanagement on the publisher side, and the other major factor is the fact that they are not satisfied with the profit margins that have been satisfactory in the past. Like, you see that they make hundreds of millions, if not billions, off of FIFA Ultimate Team microtransactions, and instead of saying, oh, well, we'll take all those hundreds of millions of dollars off of that one game and spread it around, speaking about EA here, to our entire stable of developers. Instead, they're saying, well, if we can do that with FIFA, then let's try it with Madden, and then we'll push it into our Star Wars games, and this, that, and the other. So I just think that it's overall mismanagement from the publishers, as well as them getting greedy to the point of no return when it comes to profit margins that would have been totally satisfactory in the past, no longer satiating their desire to suck the blood dry out of the consumer.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think we also have to give some responsibility to the consumer themselves too. Like, I think,
but the consumer's always been there to buy their $60 product, and I understand the whole argument that games haven't changed with inflation, stuff like that. But I just don't necessarily, and not that it's coming straight from you, Jared. I mean, we hear this all the time. The rhetoric that it's almost like we, the consumer, are to blame for the fact that these poor old publishers are just not able to make any money anymore. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's from a business perspective. I think it's an investment thing of like, well, what's the point of investing X amount of money to this when we can really just invest this lower X amount and still make more money? And I mean, I think microtransactions are going to be in games no matter what. I think anybody who sits out there and thinks like, I want a world without microtransactions in video games, I think you're living in a place that's not reality. But I do think what we need to do is we need to start steering the conversation, like we have been and everyone's trying to do, into healthy, more understandable microtransactions in games. I mean, Overwatch makes an asinine amount of money with their microtransactions and their loot boxes, and no one really complains because they do it right. And we've said this multiple times, but like, I do think the argument of wanting or not wanting microtransactions in games is an argument you're not going to win. I'm sorry, we're past that point. But I do think we can still fight towards putting the right types of microtransactions in games. I think as long
as less predatory, no pay to win, stuff like that.
Exactly. And I think if you have the systems in place where the currencies and the economy make sense, you can have a system like GTA where you do have recurrent consumer spending, as Take-Two states, but I've never felt pressured playing GTA to spend X amount of money to get X amount of dollars in the game to buy this vehicle. I'm like, if I save up for it, whatever. And I do think it's all about handling it right,
I can vibe with what you're saying there. However, one of my biggest issues is when it specifically affects single-player games that it fundamentally changes the gameplay experience and the just general experience of the game itself. Specifically speaking on Shadow of War, where to get the true ending, you basically either have to use these orcs, buy these orcs with real money, or you have to spend all this extra time. And not only that, but I've heard plenty of people talk about how these legendary orcs sometimes aren't even worth a shit when you actually get them into battle. They just die off for whatever stupid reason, like they might not help you at all in battle. And so the game is clearly not built, doesn't have the infrastructure to support things like this, and a lot of these are clearly afterthoughts that are shoved in last minute just to make that extra buck. And that's another area that needs to change quite drastically, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's also another side of it of like, we're going to this point where we're asking for max visual fidelity in games and all of these different things, and pushing games to their max and asking for these outstanding experiences. And I'm not talking from a publisher perspective, but from like a developer perspective, like, the costs go up, Obviously, the more you want in your game, and the higher graphical fidelity and the smoother it runs and stuff like that, and expenses go up and up and up. And I mean, I do think, and I'm not saying like consumers are to blame, but I do think the rising costs of game development are a byproduct of people wanting more out of video games. Therefore, they're costing more to make, and I do think it's the publisher sitting there and saying like, "Yo, we need to make more money." Then once they start earning
but they've
money
also found more sources of revenue than ever before.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, microtransactions were a way to alleviate the top end of game development and investment. But I do think the problem there is that once they found out that microtransactions worked, now we're starting to see the predatory use of them, and that's the issue. You know, what I'm trying to say is like I think microtransactions were going to be there no matter what because of the rise in game development costs. It's unfortunate that it's gone to the point where they've become so predatory. You know what I mean? I'm trying to walk that line there of like microtransactions were inevitable with the way games were going. It just this predatory type of action with them is the line we have to walk and try to fight as much as we can, you know. So
see, I'm more I see what you're saying, and yeah, we can try to find the line in this. You know, sometimes it works better than others, but I'm always going to be, you know, of the opinion and voice the opinion of always pushing away from that. I know there is a line, and there's stuff that even I'd say is acceptable, but I'm always going to push away from that because I don't want to be close to the line, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be anywhere near it. Because it can be predatory so quickly, and when you're a big business, like that's a revenue stream that's proven much more lucrative than the traditional $60 game, right? So I'm always going to try to push in that direction, away from even where it is reasonable and we can agree. Like if you were to explain to me how it works in Overwatch, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to vote, you know, for that. I'm always going to push towards, you know, straight up, I'm buying this and I'm getting it. DLC is $10, $20, whatever, and I know what it is, and I'm buying it. Instead of this microtransaction revenue stream that can so easily become predatory. Like, that old adage of, I can't remember who said it again, but I remember hearing it in school, of how do you boil a frog to death, right? 1 degree at a time, or you just drop it in a boiling pot of water.
Yeah.
If you drop it in the boiling pot, it's just going to jump out, right? The $60 game, right? If you don't want to pay for it, you're just not. But if you're paying $1 at a time, all of a sudden you turn around and you spend $1,000 and you didn't know it, right? So
yeah, but then, and I feel like the super corporate apologist on this podcast was like, I'm for big business and all this stuff. But like, to me too, part of that is like self-responsibility of like,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I understand where you're coming from. Like, it's better to not be on the line at all than to be walking the line. But for me, I guess I'm more pessimistic on it of like, I see this as an inevitability. So I would rather be fighting the fight for the good side of the line than the bad side of the line, because I kind of feel as if we're never going to move away from the line. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm not right.
Oh, no, I mean, it is inevitable, right? It's the same thing with the goddamn headphone jacks on phones, right? Like, I know that eventually I'm going to have to buy a phone without a fucking headphone jack, but it doesn't mean I want to. It doesn't mean I'm not going to until I literally have no choice, right? Because the way my car and my devices are set up, that's a huge inconvenience to me, and I understand that's the future, but fuck them. Until everything else is around me, I'm never gonna do it until I have to.
I don't necessarily, obviously this is a games podcast, but I don't necessarily know that that's the future, because you're talking about a direct wired connection, which
I have my questions as well.
It's going to be a higher audio fidelity than a Bluetooth wireless connection. So I think, but that does come back around to where just because someone's trying to force it on you doesn't mean it's necessarily the better way to go. And I do have
and Wi-Fi is worse than a hardwired too, right? But that's certainly the future.
Yeah. So I do have to agree with you, Jared, on the topic of self-responsibility. I, not that it necessarily matters to anybody, but I'm absolutely upset with the way gamers and consumers have handled this situation, because they've been whales. And there's a lot of people that are say, oh, well, I'm against microtransactions when I'm talking on Twitter or my podcast or YouTube. But in the game, well, I really like this little star card or shark card, whatever you want to call it, and I think I'll just go with it on this turn. And so if people hadn't allowed corporations to, like you said, Dom, boil them 1 degree at a time, and hadn't allowed this, hadn't been giving mooses muffins and mouses pancakes all this time, then we wouldn't You've never heard of Give a Moose a Muffin or Give a Mouse a
No.
Pancake?
Nah.
You never read those stories?
Nah.
We'll have to educate you.
I like it though.
You're making this shit up.
No, there's real quick explanation. There's a book series. 2 of them are called If You Give a Moose a Muffin or If You Give a Mouse a Pancake. It's basically about how if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Like if a moose walks up to your window while you're making breakfast and you give him a muffin, he's going to come back for the rest of your life every day. Same thing with the mouse and the pancakes. I'm really sorry for you guys that your childhood were desolate and that you grew up in wastelands where they weren't giving you the proper storybooks. However, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but just to go a little bit deeper into the point, something that's to be said. I do agree with you, Jared, on the topic of self-responsibility, and I can see where you're coming from, that game production costs are absolutely higher than ever, especially entering into the 4K age. But like I also mentioned, the point I was going to go further into is the fact that publishers are at an all-time high with the amount of revenue streams that they do have. They have obviously the microtransactions that we've discussed. Then they have DLC separate from a season pass, which is like your story expansions and maybe like a challenge mode, an extra challenge mode or something like that. But then they have piecemeal DLC, which is like the costumes that you buy or costume packs that you buy, extra guns or gun upgrades or gun modifications, this, that, and the other. Then they have the in-game ads. Now we're even seeing trophies and achievements that are sponsored. You have all sorts of sponsored content, whether it's like the Doritos XP or your Mountain Dew XP weekends for Destiny, stuff like that. I mean, I could really, really go on and on and on about the massive amount of revenue streams that publishers have found, specifically in the video game industry. So I think that we're giving them, as a consumer base or as a gamer base, we are giving them, giving these mooses and these mices too many muffins and pancakes, if you will, because we're letting these things creep in. We're letting them boil us 1 degree at a time, and we're really only focusing on this one gigantic issue, this one gigantic revenue stream that is an issue, which is microtransactions, and we're kind of losing sight of the fact that they have so many other areas where they've also been kind of gouging us when it comes to money and advertising.
Well, and the thing people often don't talk about is how they gouge developers of their time, and they're not compensated properly. Like, I think one of the biggest events that's going to happen for the gaming industry is when game developers decide to unionize finally. Hasn't happened.
I think there's, we were talking about, sorry to interrupt, but we were talking about, how Telltale needs to tighten up and could hopefully be a more well-oiled machine. And I think the game industry as a whole has a rude awakening that it is yet to encounter, because there are many different, we just saw the end of the Voice Actors Guild strike, which I still feel like they kind of got screwed. They didn't get anywhere near, it seems to me, where they originally set out to be as far as the agreement went. And so I think, publishers specifically have a very rude awakening ahead of them as far as the type of stuff that's about to come crashing down on them because of the way that they've handled these situations.
Yeah, it might have been the strategy too, right? Where you go in asking for 100 when you're really willing to accept 75.
Well, with the
right?
unions, you're not going to get 100% of what you want. You're going to cut a deal.
Exactly.
So a lot of times, the way the unions make their plans is like, we're gonna hope for the moon, but what is that saying? Reach for a star, land on the moon, some bullshit. However that saying goes.
Something. Frogs and water and moons and pies, pancakes.
Mouse with some apple pie or something.
Yeah, I'm sorry, listeners and watchers. I'm sorry that these guys are so uncultured that they've never read some of the
uncultured
best
swine
of all time. I'm surprised you guys know about Harry fucking Potter.
That's it for episode 78 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. Let's talk about what we're going to be playing. Super Mario Odyssey for me, as always. More Arkham Knight. Nothing crazy comes out next week, I don't think. Not before we record, anyways.
Quite a bit.
Well, Star Wars comes out the 17th, but we'll be recording before then. Because it comes out Friday.
Star Wars comes out December 17th. You're thinking of Justice League next week.
Battlefront.
No,
Star
Battlefront,
Wars,
Jordan, not
Oh,
the
I
movie.
got you.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the movie.
Um,
But yeah, Justice League comes out next Thursday. That's going to be a big one because we'll finally see if DC's able to pull that off. Also, it's something that me and a lot of other big DC fans have been waiting for a very long time. And then there's The Punisher on Netflix next week. There's Star Wars Battlefront 2. Yeah, there's lots of stuff coming out next week. So
Hey,
well,
you guys,
you
know what?
Record because that's next Friday, so we'll record another show before that.
well, but there's like basically like your midnight release on
Yeah.
Thursday night. We'll still be recording before that, but regardless.
You guys, if the Patriots can come down from 25 points to win the Super Bowl, Justice League can become a good movie. It's possible.
God, what are the Patriots, Dom? I've never heard of them. Talking about muffins and Patriots over here? I don't even know what.
If you
you're
give a
saying
Patriot
anymore.
a deflated ball, it wins the Super Bowl.
Oh shit!
Yeah, so pretty much Arkham Knight and Super Mario Odyssey. I don't know what else I'm going to be playing. I wanted to go see Murder on the Orient Express, but it doesn't look like it's getting very good reviews. Obviously, it's a remake of a classic. So there's that. That's pretty much it for me. I finished Rick and Morty Season 3, so I'm all caught up on Rick and Morty. Watching Stranger Things 2, currently halfway through the season, episode 4, I think. Started watching Mindhunters as well. I'm on episode 3, I think, as well there. Pretty much it.
Singular, Mindhunter.
Mindhunter, there you go.
Man, I'm going to keep playing Odyssey. I'm going to beat that thing.
Yeah.
I do need to get back to Death of the Outsider, Dishonored. I do need to wrap some shit up in that.
Yeah.
And then, that's probably all I'll get to by the time we talk next, but I do want to get to Horizon DLC after
Horizon
that.
Wilds.
Fucking Wolfenstein, it's just...
Are you excited for the Zelda
So
DLC
fun.
that's supposedly coming out in December? Champions Ballad?
Ow.
Yeah.
I can't even...
Excuse me.
It's just too much, man. It's just too much.
Man,
Too
the
much.
I mean, I
rumors...
think we're all gonna.
I don't know if I'm going to
we're
get
all
it.
gonna play it.
I don't know if I'm going to get the
I've-
DLC.
I got the season pass with my bundle, which I would have purchased anyways. But
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. I think though it's not close to my favorite game of the year, it's still a great game, and I think it's good to get.
It's a
more of
rad
great
game, dude. It's rad.
Right,
It's fucking
right,
groovy.
it's rad.
I'm just having a hard enough time getting back to it to play it to beat the main thing that I'm just like, I don't even know if I'll ever get to the DLC.
Yeah, I feel that.
I think it's a great game. It's just the thing with me, hang up with me. What about you, Jordan? What are you going to be playing?
Yeah, so something I didn't mention at the beginning of the show is Need for Speed Payback, which I started playing this week. And
Did you lose a bet?
No, I love the Need for Speed games on PS4, Dom. Why don't you stop being so prejudgmental?
I think it's because because Payback isn't getting good reviews, right? From what I've seen, or is it just a shot at Need for Speed, Dom? I don't know.
I don't know, but I've talked kind of almost ad nauseum about how Ghost are former Criterion developers, and so they definitely have a burnout twist to their Need for Speed PS4 games. Rivals, then Need for Speed 2015, and now Payback. And I will say that this is my least favorite of those three, and I love Need for Speed Rivals. I like Need for Speed 2015 quite a bit, and this one is definitely disappointing. Definitely a step in the wrong direction, sort of what I was saying with Assassin's Creed, where the way that you customize the under the hood, I guess you'd say, on your vehicles is kind of jacked up with these speed cards. They're not microtransactions, even though they sound like them, but it's not as accurate as you want to be, nor is it as accessible or just smartly done as you'd want it to be. You have to unlock certain parts of your car that you can access to tune those or mess with those, I should say. You have to there's other parts of the game that are just like really unintuitive and like I said, same thing with Assassin's Creed. Steps in the wrong direction, changes to things that didn't need to be changed. One big example for me is the fact that multiplayer and single player are now separated completely. And so they're two different game modes that you load into separately, which is really frustrating because though I'm almost never into online multiplayer, these Need for Speed games on the PS4 have been the one game that is an exception for me on, because previously in the last couple of games, you would be able to just drive up to somebody in this open world that's always online. You could play it offline, and it would just have bots in the world with you, but you drive up to somebody, hit R1 to ask them if they wanted to race. They say yes or no. If they say yes, you're off to the races. They don't stop the game. There's no like, oh, here's the starting line, 3, 2, 1. You're just racing as soon as they press yes, and so, or you press yes if someone else asked you, and so then you just start racing, and it gives you an endpoint. And that was so much fun and so cool how that was so well incorporated. And now that the single player and multiplayer modes are separate, that's not even an option anymore. So one of my favorite parts of the game was absolutely stripped from it. And then there's other little nitpicks here and there, but I think you can go online and read or watch reviews and hear a lot of those, a lot of the things. I don't necessarily have like super hot takes on that stuff. Like most of the stuff that has been fucked up about this game is pretty well documented and pretty well agreed upon across players of the series. So it's pretty unfortunate. It's not a terrible game. I'd say it's a decent game. It's pretty average. And it's certainly something that I'll be playing more of because I do just like the moment-to-moment experience. That's something that they didn't fuck up from the first 2 games. Is Ghost knows how to make the game feel, knows how to make the cars feel, how the races and the road feel, and that's really, really fun, riveting action. But it was a lot more riveting when you can just hop on with somebody and start zooming away, if you will. So that sucks, and it sucks that, like I said, they did take steps in the wrong direction, steps backward in a lot of different areas, but I don't think this will be the last one, and hopefully they'll listen to people and maybe even update this one to improve some of those issues that I have. Just a note, it does have microtransactions. They are pretty well hidden, but they are there, but no surprise, it's an EA game, so there are those pesky little buggers. But yeah, I'll be playing more of that. Mention some of the other media and entertainment coming out next week, so I'll definitely be getting into that stuff as well as some of the shows that I mentioned previously. I'll be watching, and I'm sure I'll play more Assassin's Creed Origins and definitely be further into Frozen Wilds next time we come about for a podcast. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Before I get to the closing of the show real quick, I was thinking earlier when we were doing the Xbox thing about like what studios they should get or what creators. Do you guys remember? I don't know if it was during the Xbox One launch E3 or maybe the year after, when that dude came out on stage and he just said, "Peggle 2," and he put his fist in the air. Do you guys remember that? He was like, one of those Peggle 2, and I was just laughing about that in my head. I'm like, oh, how cringy.
PopCap, another studio under the iron thumb of EA. Good luck, Respawn. We'll see you dead in a few years.
I have to thoroughly disagree with you there. I wanted to get in the conversation about that. I think you're way down on EA, deservedly so. But
But should I send you the list of the numerous developers that they've acquired and closed down throughout the years? Really talented developers that they've closed down throughout just since.
Talent doesn't mean their games sell well, though. I don't know. It's a whole discussion.
Sure, but I think that they could sell better in different environments where they were properly managed.
Yeah, but that might not. I don't want to get into this conversation. We're about to close the show. We'll do it next week when we talk about visceral stuff. Thank you guys for listening to episode 78 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. Please, if you can, follow us on iTunes and leave a review. It really helps. As well, if you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Glad to have Dom back. We'll have him back next week as well. So it'll be us 3 again for 2 weeks in a row, for once in a very long while. What else am I missing? I think that's pretty much it.
Rest in peace, pandemic. That's what you're missing, Jared. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, pandemic. Yeah, we'll catch you guys next week. Have a good one.